Hi, everyone here, including Chocolate and Fluffy, and to all of you around the world. Thank to so many of you who have sent good wishes for my brother. He is much better, and my source is back. He's okay, and we are reconnected. I also have more from him to share with you tonight. But first, remember last week was the mystery of the green-colored text paragraphs about Blue Eisenhower November and the acronyms OPRP and TOI inserted into my source's encrypted proton mail. If proton mail is as protective as it claims, then that was a breach of the encryption, which should not have been possible. So who did it? And why the focus on OPRP and TOI acronyms and the sign-off, quote, "This thread is now compromised, Blue Eisenhower November." Several of you emailed me with your search results, and Mark J. found this website. Paranormalis, Think Outside the Mind, and a report dated October 10th, 2017 by Remnant entitled, quote, "The Nemesis Protocol as dictated by OPRP and President D. Eisenhower. What the acronym OPRP stands for is still not shown, but here is the beginning of this Nemesis Protocol. Quote, a set of instructions dictated to Eisenhower in 1947 of the first actionable iteration by OPRP. The full document was destroyed before the speech, Atoms for Peace, was published. Close quote. Now jump down to the fourth paragraph. Quote, thus we are considering the possibility that any who invent time travel may utilize it strictly to control technological advancement within the existing space-time timeline. They could easily utilize time travel in such a way as to continuously prevent anyone else from discovering the idea. This would make them the greatest enemy to our planet, our way of life, and the existence of our humanity. They are the nemesis. We have had a form of contact that, while not concise proof, is circumstantial. We believe the existence of this nemesis may be a real threat. In order to protect the information we have, a group that operates without impunity is being created with an impenetrable personnel and an impenetrable fortress that cannot be faulted, even considering someone's ability to time travel and attempt interference, close quote. Could that nemesis be the hostile insect Trantaloids? Remember 2.5 months ago on March 30th, 2022, my subject in that night's Earthfiles YouTube channel was the Trantaloid insect civilization on Epsilon Eridani, 10.5 light years from Earth, that is considered highly hostile and dangerous because the insects have the most advanced temporal technology. Temporal means they can manipulate and control timelines. According to remote viewer Buddy Bolton in New York City, who did these illustrations from his remote viewing, the Trantaloid insects want to expand beyond Epsilon Eridani, with Earth being one of their targets for habitation. In that Trantaloid program, I quoted from a transcript of an alleged presidential briefing for the newly elected President Ronald Reagan at Camp David, Maryland, March 6 to 8, 1981. Advisor number 4, Mr. President, meaning Mr. Reagan, the Trantaloid technology is probably 1,000 years more advanced than ours, maybe even more. Some of their materials are not found on this planet, strange materials, nothing like Earth. Advisor number 1, Mr. President, these hostile aliens are pretty sneaky. They seem to appear and then disappear, which is beyond our technical understanding. They also seem to float or defy gravity. We have actual photographs of them doing this recorded by a military intelligence unit in New Mexico. Advisor number 4. We found several strange spots on the Eben and Trantaloid star charts. We concluded these spots were space tunnels, as the Ebens described, shortcuts from one point of space to another. Again, this is Alcubierre warp drive physics and also relates to time manipulation. According to the Ebens, the Trantaloids use a different form of propulsion, something like matter versus antimatter. A great deal of energy is released, but we don't have the capability to do that, close quote. Back in September of 2021, about 9 months ago, my source stressed, quote, temporal technology exists and is used almost exclusively by the Trantaloid insect species. Temporal technology is used in almost every human abduction. Artificial intelligence, biological clone greys are being manufactured and used by the Trantaloid insect species. Temporal technology is dangerous due to the fact that it can disrupt an entire planet, a large region of space, or an individual in prominent government positions. It can be used for good and or bad. Temporal technology is the same, used to mix different timelines and cause many time-related problems, especially concerning Earth in both future and current timelines. Temporal technology was discovered during research of quantum tunneling technology. Temporal tunneling is used between the operational bases on Mars and Los Alamos National Laboratory to facilitate material transfer, but not human transfer, close quote. Understanding all of this and allegedly warning U.S. President Dwight David Eisenhower were the biological tall and ancient gray beings that showed up in the World War II 1940s, supported by various kinds of artificial intelligence robots. Earthfiles viewer Bonnie Z emailed me after last week some photos of an Eisenhower dollar blue Ike minted only in 1971 to 1974. On one side is World War II hero and U.S. President from 1953 to 1961, Dwight David Eisenhower. The reverse side of the silver dollar is the imprint of the official Apollo 11 mission patch that shows an American eagle landing on the moon in 1969 with the Earth above its head. And this, of course, echoes Neil Armstrong's stepping onto the moon for the first time in July of 1969. President Eisenhower's knowledge about extraterrestrial intelligences interacting with our moon and Earth and beyond is described by Army Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso in his excellent 1997 book, The Day After Roswell, subtitled, quote, a former Pentagon official reveals the U.S. government's shocking UFO cover-up, close quote. On page 106, Colonel Corso wrote, quote, during the Eisenhower administration, information about the classified research and data collection projects into extraterrestrials, the word is used, was routinely filtered to the Office of Research and Development in the Pentagon because the head of the Research and Development Board had been one of the original members of the MJ-12 group appointed by President Harry Truman, close quote. That means President Eisenhower also knew all about government investigations of UFOs and E.T.s. And the green page, so strangely inserted into my source's encrypted Proton mail, focuses on the invention of time travel in which that acronym, OPRP, was working on unifying space-time quanta and field equations in a central algorithm not made public. The green page ended, quote, "This thread is now compromised. Blue Eisenhower, November," close quote. Now, this photograph of a biological gray on the left and a smiling President Eisenhower on the right turned up in a blue Eisenhower November search by Earthfiles viewer Gina Urbini of Georgia, who has been a great help in this research. But there's no date, no location, and no proof behind this photograph, but it is in a music video created in 1954 when Eisenhower had been president for only about a year.
People's I don't know what I'm gonna do. I got them Eisenhower thinking about me and you. What on earth are we gonna do?
And that gray type that was standing in front of Dwight Eisenhower in an alleged photo is now shown in this video that was recorded in a hospital film sent to me 2 years ago from the source as actual footage of a human medical team working on a biological gray extraterrestrial in a hospital bed. There is no information about the year, location, or even if it was from a crash site. There have been speculations and rumors for a long time that President Eisenhower took office in 1953 and then agreed to sign a treaty with extraterrestrials, perhaps like this specific gray type. And maybe as rumored, the treaty required the E.T.s to provide the U.S. with advanced technologies in exchange for letting the gray aliens harvest blood and tissues from animals, as well as to harvest sperm and eggs from some humans for hybrid genetic manipulation projects, something my source says the tall whites and the Nordics do not do. But my source also says, quote, "The tall grays are mining for helium-3 on our Earth moon. The tall grays are still biologically original to their species, and they are trying to extend their ability to exist. But it is the smaller grays that are completely engineered biological drones of sorts that work for these grays and others. They are pre-programmed to carry out specific duties on mission assignments. These smaller drones have no empathy. They just do what is programmed into their consciousness layer. And there are biological drones of both short and tall grays. The short ones are all cloned. Most of the tall grays are cloned too, with only about 34% of the tall grays being an original biological life form," close quote. That means only 1/3 of the tall gray civilization still exists as an original biological life. All the rest of them are clones and artificial intelligence. Continuing with my source, quote, "So that is why the tall grays are desperately trying to match DNA and make hybrids on planet Earth in order to continue the tall, gray biological civilization which could die out. My source says, quote, "As time goes on, especially this decade of 2020 to 2030, you will see a lot of change in the information coming out about life outside of Earth, especially intelligent life. That much I can guarantee for you. My hope is that others like myself will stick their skin on the line and come forward to share the real truth about all of this. It has been way too long for all of the secrecy," close quote. More than a year ago, I told my source, quote, "Since I talked to an Area 51 S4 physicist in 2014 about upcoming apocalyptic events expected between 2020 to 2030, why haven't the tall, blonde, very advanced, and friendly Nordics and tall whites neutralized or halted or changed this decade of 2020 to 2030 to not be apocalyptic? I hear from abductees and my source that those beings have the power and the ability to change the future." My source replied, quote, "In the material I have read and meetings with people I can definitely trust, this is where my dear friend Ben Rich of Lockheed made the statement that it would take an act of God to bring these technologies to the mainstream public. I can assure you that he was not joking. I'll say this, our human group consciousness can affect our environment directly. That being said, if enough of the masses get pushed mentally into thinking a certain catastrophe is imminent, that thought can get programmed and transformed into our reality through the quantum field background of this universe. That is a scientific fact, and it is being used currently to transfer information data packets very long distances through space." And then I ask him, are we humans now on Earth in so many planetary crises? Are we receiving unseen help from the tall Nordics that live in Procyon 1 and 2 and Sirius B and perhaps the Pleiades? And he answered, quote, "The simple, broad answer is yes. The direct threat to us is twofold. One is that the Trantaloid harvesting program going on to covertly take over our planet Earth is to replace us humans by blended human hybrids created by the Trantaloid insect species from Epsilon Eridani, that is 10.47 light years from Earth. The second is the manipulation of our climate to raise the temperature gradually to a level to facilitate an environment that is conducive to support new hybrids. The race of Trantaloid insect types have been doing this to other planetary species for a very long time. Their programs of deception and abductee programming have been going on here since the mid-1950s. This is their Trantaloid way of overtaking another planet rich in resources without incurring warfare. Because of the way they use temporal technology, time manipulation, it makes the insects extremely dangerous to deal with. And this is why we are in joint programs with different off-world species to put a stop to the Trantaloid program of hybridization and to allow us humans a chance to develop on our own timeline to join our stellar neighbors and move out and expand our awareness in space. He continued, quote, "Linda, you have to understand that the E.T. groups that we work with have been working very hard behind the scenes to both protect us humans and to put an end to the insect species threat. This will end in our favor, and I am confident in saying so, mainly due to some of our own hardware that we have been back engineering and testing in low Earth orbit. The problem that we wrestle with is that there are military personnel in certain circles. They want to see and really dig deep into that Trantaloid insect society to understand about why and how the reasoning goes with the Trantaloids to conquer whole planets of species at once, take over a planet from the inside, as opposed to war and attack. It's JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Command, and DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, that give the closed-door, invitation-only briefings to select companies or committees about the ET situation. And you would be surprised how much of the research is handled by private companies or industry. And it is sad, in my opinion, that these programs are so quickly classified. But the truth is that some humans have been found harvested or partially mutilated by the Trantaloids, and that is the main reason for non-disclosure at this time on Earth. And that is what is behind statements that you have heard, like, quote, "the public would be shocked." And the answer is that humans are being abducted and some don't get returned in a friendly manner, and that is very difficult and disturbing to everyone managing these problems, close quote, my source. I feel like I'm at the center of a large canvas where thousands of different dots of information about this universe are accumulating like a pointillisme painting. For the first time, I'm beginning to see an image coming into focus that is much larger than the canvas. There is not one single consciousness. There are millions pulsing from the millions of different beings on planets evolving into infinity. And just like Earth, there are predators after innocent prey and other compassionate minds trying to protect innocent life from physical and spiritual marauders. The more I learn, the deeper my sympathy grows for our human American government and for all human governments, as I have more understanding of what the United States was discovering from World War II on. That included extraterrestrial beings such as the friendly tall whites, Nordics, and the ancient grays that want to help humanity. They wanted it then, and they want to now. While at the most opposite extreme, human governments and power brokers have also been learning that there are hostile threats in this universe that range from gamma ray burst annihilation of maybe planets in a solar system to shape-shifting insect Trantaloids that want Earth for themselves and can camouflage as anything they want, including as humans, in order to take over another planet for their expanding insect population. I was a naive teenager when President Eisenhower shook my hand as Miss Idaho 1963 in Boise, Idaho, where I was born, grew up, and got through college on those pageant scholarships. Even with white gloves on, I could feel in his handshake kindness, intelligence, and humor. That was 6 decades ago, but only 2 years before that handshake, President Eisenhower was already warning in his January 1961 speech, inaugurating a new president, that American democracy was threatened by misplaced power and secrecy in the military-industrial complex. Quote, "In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. Dwight David Eisenhower, President of the United States, January 20th to 1953 to January 20th, 1961. And it seems to me that tonight, in what I have just shared from beginning to Eisenhower's warning, is the big box of the complexities, that we're in a universe where we are the product of genetic manipulation by a variety of other advanced extraterrestrial intelligences going back at least 2 million years. And we have ended up in a civilization in the last several thousand years in which all humans were denied any of the truth about the fact that the universe is teeming with intelligent life and that it has been involved in our planetary system, our solar system, and beyond, in the 3 trillion estimated galaxies. And that, as incredibly incomprehensible as it seems that in the middle of the 21st century, that we still have been kept in like a straitjacket of policies of denials and lies in order, one, to keep power brokers in place and in control. But there also have apparently been concerns, compassionate concerns, about humanity learning the whole truth or truths, of which tonight I have just touched a few scratches in the top of the iceberg, and that humanity would fall apart if they were told the truth. And I feel completely the opposite. And I think that Eisenhower had come to probably a similar position to some degree toward the end of his life. That in order for a democracy of, by, and for the people to evolve in a universe this full of advanced life, of all ranges, peace, of friendly, neutral, hostile, we, another intelligent humanoid, we need to be told the whole truth. We need to understand all of it. We need to understand the whole relationship between a universe that is conscious and reacts to the consciousnesses inside it. We have to learn and become more sophisticated about the interaction and what it can bring about. And that as we sit in 2022, at the middle of the year, the summer solstice has begun, we still do not have a formal, truthful, honest coming together of the entire Earth mind with leaders, with citizens, with children, and that the statement, "We are not alone in this universe," is finally stated. No matter how you look at this in terms of threat assessment or education about the truth, the fact that there is a vicious and terrible war in Ukraine, while we are being kept from knowing all of this other information, it seems to me that that says with big red bold letters, if you don't tell the truth, you will never ever know how powerful the human mind and the human soul might be and might have been to keep this planet moving forward in a collaboration with friendly E.T.s that could help us and teach us. And that would have changed, perhaps, some of our deadly wars, might have prevented even the one today. And that the next big revolution must be that we are all told all of the truth. And then, as a intelligent humanoid civilization with a complex background that brought us to this point, that the planet as a civilization, not as warring tribes, an Earth civilization could then maybe go forward in the most wondrous peace on Earth, joining in hand with people that are in Procyon A and B and Sirius A and B and on and on and on. Sort of a happy ending to an incredible, incredible movie. That's my hope, my wish, that we get past this superimposed, we are alone and we're not. The universe is so complex and interactive. And on that note, I want to welcome everybody here to the Earthfiles YouTube channel, and that we have been thrilled here to see such large audiences coming, and that I hope that this is another evening where you sense, you feel slightly exhilarated by knowing that we are here in the context of telling the truth, and that the truth can be managed because we have friends who are advanced. And on that note, I want to go to Ian and say, what have we got in our comments, our questions and chats?
Thank you for another brilliant presentation. We've got viewers tuning in from all around the world, from the United States and Canada. The Philippines as well represented here tonight, with Goldie and Michael as well. We've got Belgium and also the Dominican Republic are here. And a big shout out as well to those in Turkey and Istanbul who are watching. Also, Hannah's here tonight.
Oh, Hannah! She is my granddaughter. She is so beautiful and so smart. Oh, I love her. She's 7 years old, and I would love to see her evolve on this planet as we go into a spacefaring collaboration with true friends that are in this universe, and maybe she will become an astronaut. I know if I were 7, that is what I would want to be, and explore this universe. So Hannah, I love you.
Linda, Eisenhower knew about the E.T.s from his services in World War II and his presidency. This is what Mike Teacher is saying. It was the Dulles brothers who had influence concerning the secrecy. Can you comment?
I think that it's very true that there was a lot of knowledge in the United States government and probably our allies collaborating going back into the end of the 30s. And that by 1941, when there was the crash in Missouri in Cape Girardeau, which I'm convinced occurred, and that they had bodies that when they, maybe Det left Bronk in Washington, D.C., by then, there would not have been MJ-12, but he would have been perhaps a medical person they went to, and he ended up in MJ-12. But whatever it is, when they did the analysis of those bodies in Cape Girardeau and they said they were clones, that might have been one of those moments where the Allies, leading up to what finally became our involvement with the Japanese attack in Pearl Harbor in December of 1941. But I'm assuming that we already had information. And there had to have been all kinds of intelligence operations working in Germany as Hitler was working his way up to his obsession that there were E.T.s from Aldebaran that were blonde, blue-eyed, white-skinned, and that he was going to end up being the world leader with these blonde, blue-eyed beings from another star, and that he was going to annihilate the Hebrews in order to accomplish that, all of that, that we would have had intelligence sources that would have been reporting back to the United States about all of that. So in a strange, almost ironic way, looking back now, there were probably the context that intel spies were reporting back to our government and others would have been that Adolf Hitler was obsessed with star beings from another planet, and that he was talking about it, and that he was using the swastika as being a symbol from E.T.s in the past, and all of this. And then by 41, we get bombed in Hawaii, and World War II is unfolding, and we, strangely enough, then are the first civilian or nation on the earth to let off an atomic bomb, and that there is all kinds of stuff in documents that have not been very much analyzed that indicate that our creation of the atomic bomb that was tested and then dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that Oppenheimer had collaborated with Einstein. There are supposed to be documents that they were talking about E.T.s, almost as if there was some information even then as they were doing the Manhattan Project. And then 45 to 47, there's just a couple of years in there where the question could be asked. Today, there's been a lot of talk about the fact that the E.T.s are not going to allow nuclear war on the Earth because it will damage all kinds of things that the E.T.s will not allow. And there have been many abductees who have heard this, and I have heard this, that if you split the atom, you are tearing into dimensions that we know nothing about, and that the E.T.s have insisted they would not allow that to happen. But just like everything else with its contradictions in this field, if that was of great concern, and our governments were already in the intelligence agencies knew that there was something that fell into a category of off-world beings here, why wouldn't Oppenheimer, Einstein in the background, and others, why wouldn't they either have been stopped or the atomic bomb tests stopped? That would have certainly been the single most dramatic way for E.T.s to introduce themselves to planet Earth. We are here, we've been watching you, we made you, but we're not going to allow you to split the atom and tear into other dimensions that we know about and we interact with, but you know nothing about. And so we're going to stop it. They didn't. And that I've always been puzzled by what seems like a schizophrenic contradiction. Today, with what's going on in Ukraine and the Soviet Union, we keep feeling like we're depending upon the notion that E.T.s will not allow nuclear war on planet Earth. But there's so many constant contradictions that when you get into trying to analyze what might happen, you run up against what I'm reporting about tonight, and did so for exactly the reason of the complexity of the whole bloody situation. Temporal technology. That there would be an intelligent insect group that, for reasons that are not clear, that they have become masters of manipulating time. And if you can manipulate time, you can do something that my source has written to me about, and I have had discussions with some scientists, that they know that the temporal technology that the Trantaloids can do is that they could abduct a person, let's say I'm just picking this randomly, that they could pick a person at midnight going January 1 to 2. And the person could be taken to another solar system for 20 years. And yet, the way they control time, they would return the person to 1 minute or 1 second before they were taken, no memory whatsoever, and that they would just continuing as if nothing had happened. Well, if they have that kind of precise and down to a second ability to take people and put them back in a timeline that we really don't relate to, because it sounds like it's like a river that you can rise up above and come back here and go here and take water from here and put it here. But if all of that is true, then the manipulation of the timeline or timelines of Earth right now in June of 2022, what is happening? There have been probably more emails and more letters to me since January of this year than I've ever seen before of people saying, is there something going on with time? And there's a broad bell-shaped curve of descriptions. But there is a sense that a lot of people, whether they're all sensitive or what the reason, the people were feeling that something is messing up the timelines. And we have been through a pandemic. We're still in a strange aspect of the pandemic where it seems to be contagious, maybe not as serious, but nobody knows what is coming next. And the constant problems of getting the world back into the organization, the workers, things moving that was before, it all seems jagged and as if things are happening without warning. And you wake up in the morning and you feel like, oh my God, what is going to happen today? Could that be part of the, I guess I want to say, like, if a timeline changes, what would happen to the consciousnesses in the changed timeline when it happens secretly? And if you are Trantaloids versus Nordics and tall whites, they would be at the level of trying to fight each other by countering the temporal technology. We on Earth wouldn't have a clue what was happening. What relationship does our government, though, and other governments have to this other huge, big box of knowledge and interaction? And that's where it gets very, you really don't know what is actually happening in any 24-hour cycle. So I hope that gives some insight in, with the caveat that, does anybody really know? Are you there?
Sorry, Linda, are you back to me?
Yes.
Thank you, Linda. No, that's very helpful. Linda, we've got people also mentioning in the chat about their own personal experiences, and I've asked them to contact you.
Good.
We have someone who says in 1978, their mother said, we were working with 3 E.T. races and said we were protected by a galactic federation. They were transferred to Kansas City, Missouri when they were 15 for a missile defense bendix. So that would be interesting. They say they're going to follow up with you on that one.
And Ian, what 3 species were protecting them? Can you ask them, and if they will report to you that you could tell me so we could announce? I would like to know what they think were the three species protecting them. Are you there? Are we losing Ian?
No, I'm hearing you. No, that's fine. I'm just waiting for you to finish. I think there's just a slight delay tonight.
Okay. Yeah. What are the three that they perceive as protecting them?
Okay, Troy says he's going to send you an email, hopefully after tomorrow.
Can he tell you tonight just so we can live tell what the three were?
Okay, Troy, if you're listening in the chat tonight, please post in the chat and we'll look out for your response to what those three species are, please.
Thank you.
Troy, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Linda, people are talking about the temporal tech. Does the temporal tech cause the Mandela effect? And also, Amy Aristodemu reasons if time travel is possible for aliens, then us humans should be able to time travel too.
I would say that conclusion at the end is correct, but I don't think this is technology that is a piece of cake. I think it's quite complex. My source seems to imply that the real masters of it are the Trantaloids, unfortunately, which makes them so dangerous. On the other question, say that one to me again.
Okay, it was about the time travel. Just bear with me a second. Just get my papers in order. I'm just looking for that last question, and I'll come back to that one, Linda, if that's okay.
Yeah.
While I just sort something else out here. But we've got Mary Goff says she's experienced what you mentioned about the time travel regarding time manipulation too. So she has also experienced time travel or time manipulation.
Yeah, it comes up. It always has come up in the human abduction syndrome, but the problem has been we humans don't really grok the concept, the idea that time itself can be shaken like a hose, something in the future taken and put in the past, something in the past put in the future, wars in manipulating time. These are words. I personally don't fully understand the concept either. And that makes it more difficult because we are beings that have been denied so much truth that something like manipulation of time, it's hard to grasp. Do you know what I'm getting to, Ian? I don't know what the problem is.
It says there's a delay, Linda. It says, the original question was, does temporal tech cause the Mandela effect? That was the original question.
Yes, thank you. I'm assuming that temporal, which is time manipulation technology, temporal technology, that what I just ended up talking about, beings being able to take somebody from a car or a bedroom and then return them to 1 second or 1 minute or whatever right before, and then there's nothing in the abduction frame of reference. It's sort of the idea that Bugs Bunny and Porky the Pig were doing one thing was happening in the cartoons of the 1940s, and then suddenly there was some kind of a change, and the makers of the film say, no, there was not a change, but people insist that it was, right? And that those are markers of some kind of change in time. But I've heard people almost come to fisticuffs over the Mandela effect, whether it was real or not. And I'll throw it back to the audience. How would you prove it? And
we'll see what the audience say about that. I need to do the super chats now, Linda,
okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
So here we go. We've got Moonbird, Lubna Azad, Obi-Wan, Traz, Nathaniel Moshkin, Goldie Orvido Baroa, Sergeant Cadet, Kathy Iwanowski, Joanna Cooks, Leo Lindsay, Stephen Adamski, XAU EPOV 70, Jason Odom, Daniel Gomez, Alien Love, Stefan van der Lam, and Alien Love again. Thank you.
Thank you, you guys. Really, truly, so, so much. It's just wonderful to have this feeling of energy and audiences that just keep growing and going. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And Ian always says to put this in, and so I'll do it here quickly. If you have not subscribed, click on that red subscribe word in your lower right screen and hit those like buttons if you like what we're doing at the Earthfiles YouTube channel. Okay, Ian, what else?
Is it possible to be biological but also lack a soul?
It's a really interesting question. I don't have any definitive answer in any direction. And I would add this much, because it's been reinforced in the last year. I have talked in earlier years on this show about what I think is the importance of the human soul, and I think that we do have extraordinary souls that some language puts it as quantum energy packets, and their job is to constantly absorb and recycle in and out of the life and death cycle, contributing knowledge to a divine and infinite field. And that there can be a difference in the strength, the quality, the ability of some souls. And that we humans, in spite of our tribal tendencies to fight over anything and everything, that we have ended up with extraordinary souls that are recognized by others. And as some abductees have said, they've gotten the impression that some of the beings that have taken them in an abduction seem to know something about the soul, and that they would like to have a soul like humanity. So in this whole huge complexity of humanity, and why would we be under the study of, the protection of, and the conflict of so many beings? Well, you could say they think Earth is their property before we, Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien, showed up as a product of manipulation of DNA and already evolving primates, maybe 45,000 years ago in the crossfade with Neanderthalensis, which was another genetic programmed humanoid, also by extraterrestrials, as I understand it. And it goes to, once you look at the Neanderthal to Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien, a question that just beats like a red light signal. Why was Neanderthal taken out in this crossfade with Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien? Because it was a big, strong humanoid, had a bigger cubic brain capacity than the one that came after Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien. There are so many mysteries, but humans, I think we are extraordinary to some of the beings, while at the same time, I think that we have the capacity to go into space forces and evolve with the tall whites and the Nordics and on, that humanity, Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien, has a combination of many different strengths that might be really good exploring in the universe. It's a strange mix. What else, Ian?
We have a question here from the Czech Republic. Hi, Linda. Can you please tell us if the shadow beings have connections to other alien races, and if yes, who has more control over them?
Well, the shadow beings are still a puzzle to me and to every abductee that I've ever talked to about them. And the best illustration is in my Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness, which, by the way, all those books are available now. And that is the Linda Porter case. And she had she did a whole series of beautiful drawings. She had two that both involved a beam. One was coming down out of the sky sort of like this, and she was outdoors, and she was down at the bottom where it sort of fanned out. So it's coming up. She describes coming down. The light in there was sort of yellowish, and then she was deposited very gently on the ground where she lived. The other drawing was of her in bed, and she is seeing right in the middle of her bedroom a big oval, and in it are two shadow beings that are coming out, and standing right next to her head at the bed already is a gray, one of the small ones, one of the Android or AI ones. And there's what looks like a little flying saucer with lights going around it, as if it is doing something to the whole environment of the little gray AI, the little machine in the air with lights, and then this big oval in the middle of the bedroom with they're silhouettes, they're humanoid shaped, but they are what she called silhouette or shadow people. She said that she understood that they can come dimension to dimension. They can come point to point by using the technology that they use with the shadow people to enter into another dimension or another matter world. So in her mind, it was, I thought, one of the clearest distinctions. There may be others who have more to add. Both of them seem to involve something reaching into our matter space. But the one that deposited her, she always associated with taking her up and down in these beams to go someplace. And then this other that would end up with this black oval with black shadows, she personally thought were dimensional connections. And that the dimensional or frequency connection could literally be from another dimension, taking her to another dimension, or they coming from another dimension. And then the frequency of where she would be going with them might be to another frequency that was not in this matter world, without clarity. These are efforts by the abductees to try to explain what they see, what they experience, but they don't have a full understanding of that either. So that is one of the best descriptions of when people have seen shadow people. It has been in what Linda Porter would say was a dimension to dimension, point to point link up in our world. What else?
Hi, Linda. Okay, Dr. Coffin says, delve even deeper. Awesome footage of Eisenhower. Linda is telling humanity the truth and celebrate. And the Goldie Olvida says,
I'm trying, but
share a bit more about your experience during the Miss Idaho contest.
Well, I can talk about, but I wanted to say, I'm trying as hard as I can to get factual data. And factual data should include always dates, locations, and time. But it's so clear that so many things have been sanitized in the history since World War II by government agencies not wanting, let's say, anybody to be able to prove that Dwight D. Eisenhower was with one of those grays with the big head and did a treaty. They don't want anybody to be able to prove. And so things are strangely isolated like islands, that you would think that they would have some context, and you can't find the context. And when you can't, I always say, well, it's been sanitized. And that is one of the issues of reporting. Right now, the networks, hopefully, are trying to get into reporting in which they will be giving the time, the date, whoever was the photographer. All of that should be starting to be on television news as we move forward into this new, we'll call it the new age or era, of finally starting to talk about other intelligences and technologies. But it's a step forward and 10 backwards. The way that things get blocked, and then you realize that a lot of the blockage is because CBS and BBC and on, they want to have documents, they want to have proof, they want to have dates, time, all the things that I, as a professional investigative reporter and TV producer, have always tried for. But you find that the government has all of the proof in all of these underground archives that they have kept evolving for 80 years since World War II. But the public and the media still don't have access. So that is another way of basically controlling and making it difficult for information to be reported that is credible. So I hope all of you understand I am trying very hard to have firsthand eyewitnesses, military eyewitnesses, as much documentation as possible. But it is still a world in which we're not supposed to know anything about the Trantaloids, about the tall whites, about the Nordics, about the teals, about all the AI grays, about the Nordics, and on and on and on. It's got to change. It's got to change if we're going to evolve as a civilization. Okay, Ian, I'll take one more question.
Okay, Sexy Sadie says, Linda, are the mantis species part of this? I've always heard the mantis were gentle and smart.
There was a very interesting report that I was reading that was saying that the praying mantises fall into the hollow form, HOLOFORM, deviation or different use of the term hologram. And that what they were doing were categorizing that there are certain beings that many people repeat and report, but that they are holoforms. It's hard to wrap your mind around the idea that something could interact just like it was real, only be made out of light, which is what a holoform by definition would be, hologram. Now, that's one of the, we'll call it the new definition of a praying mantis that I've heard. But if you go back through the at least 3,000 interviews that I have done since 1979 with abductees, the praying mantis comes up a lot, more than people would think. And the praying mantis always seems to be associated with things related to abductions and genetic manipulations, the extraction of sperm, the extraction of eggs. And a lot of people in the abduction syndrome, male and female both, have said sort of the same words, that they feel tremendous age. And Linda Porter said, and another, they said, they're as old as our solar system, Linda, because that's their job. They are made in the Andromeda galaxy by a group of advanced humanoids who want to have caretakers, overseers in the Milky Way galaxy of solar system development, and that the praying mantises are created to have the ability to have a life that is 10 billion years, in which they have complete control on no cellular disintegration in their bodies, and that these praying mantises are designed for solar system interaction and overseeing, and that is why they must be conscious, interacting. Alive seems to sound biological, for 10 billion years. So on one extreme, they're defined as a hollow form of light. On this extreme, they are described as a biological creature created with self-regulating, self-repairing cells that never, ever, ever, ever age, and that's how they would sustain themselves as a life form with huge archival capacity, reasoning capacity, overseeing all kinds of planetary systems, and could do it for 10 billion years. In some ways, it would just be like saying a human was born and at age 18, you just constantly, your cells just stayed there and they never changed. Therefore, you never age, you never die, you just keep working on exciting universe projects. So I don't know which of these are true about the praying mantis, but that praying mantis type really comes up in abductions. So if any of you might be working in science, medicine, the government, military, and you know the answers, the hard answers to these questions, you can communicate with me through proton mail, through hard mail, through FedEx. And if you have answers to these questions, I really, and when I have made these statements, I do sometimes get really, really gold answers. And it's part of what helps me to keep going forward with trying to get as many facts on the untouchable subject of other life in the universe, of which we're in a universe and it's teeming with life. And I would love to see us all be able to talk about everything openly. So communicate with me if you can on that question about praying mantises, holoforms, are we in a holographic universe, all of it. And for all of you in every country that is now tuning in to Earthfiles YouTube, welcome and thank you. I love all of you. I want to see human beings, Homo sapien, not only survive this decade, but that we grow up into the agape loving civilization that some E.T.s have said that is what we were made to be. Agape love, everybody. See you next week.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.